Welcome back to CFRs, the audacious video cast from the team at whatmatters.com. I'm joined here as always by Elizabeth. Happy New Year, Elizabeth.
Happy New Year, Ryan. And everybody else out there. I hope you had a wonderful start to 2021.
Well, speaking of 2021, don't you have some exciting news to share?
I do indeed. Forgive me for bringing this up at the very beginning, but if you have ever wished that you had an OKR advisor in your back pocket to let you know what you need to do and when, now is your chance. Through Audacious, our newsletter, we have a new initiative for 2021 I am really, really excited about. And it's a monthly guide to OKRs. And I'm really excited about it because I'm extremely privileged to lead everybody on that journey. So I'll give you more information on how to sign up for the annual OKR cycle emails. And if I can help you get through the year, it would absolutely be my pleasure. So thanks for letting me plug my thing, Ryan. Now on with the show.
Joining us today is Cameron Koczon, founder at Fictive, an engineering and design studio based in Brooklyn, New York, and as well as the co-founder of Vlogger. Cameron, hello.
Hey, how's it going, Ryan? Hey, what's up, Elizabeth?
Hey, Cameron. Nice to see you.
It's so good to see you. Cameron, the Fictive team, you're remote, aren't you?
Well, now I think maybe everybody's a little remote, but yeah, we were remote like from our founding 10 or 11 years ago. We then sort of evolved into like a middle group where like half of the people were like, we got a nice office in New York. And so the people started coming to there. And so we ended up in this sort of like hybrid mode where anybody could have left if they wanted to, but they were sort of choosing to come into the office. And then now we're back to really fully experiencing like pure remote solitary professional confinement.
What do you think is going to happen in 2021? Will you bring the teams back together in this 50-50 split, or what's the plans for Fictive?
It's a really good question. I think we probably won't prescribe that. I mean, a lot of the teams in New York, many people have relocated. I think that if we open the office back up, if we're allowed to and that's safe, then people will come back in. It's a nice space. I think there are definitely benefits to remote, but there is also a benefit to having like a binary switch in your life between work is here at this place and home is here or there. And I think the forced remoteness has changed the tenor of what it was. Before, it was like a really nice perk and total freedom. Like a lot of our folks have family that are international, and so they might, go back to Korea for a month instead of 2 weeks because they can continue to work there. And so I think it also lets people be closer to their families, but when you're forced to do it, and especially when you do a lot of digital work, I think it can be a little bit depressing to get up in one room, walk into another room, create digital stuff, which is invisible for all intents and purposes, and then the day ends, and then you put on, probably in that same room, you put on Netflix or something. So I think probably people will be hungry for human interaction like they've never been before, which, might be a really positive thing. I like to take the most positive look possible on that. So I don't know.
I do too. I think we've got a lot of teams that are eager just to get back together, but they're going to make the best of the things they learned this year, right? How to be more, how to give people more space, how to be comfortable with families walking into the room, right? Little kids.
I love that.
Yeah. I do too.
I super love that.
Tell me more about Fictive, the work that the team does, so we can set the stage.
Sure, yeah. Like the main things that we do at Fictive is basically product design, product development, or like pretty complicated website design, website development, where essentially it's become a product. Like you can have like a static website, or like the team just released design and engineering. They did the Foursquare.com. And so like that's like quite a big project that is beyond the scope of just like your basic landing page kind of deal. And so I think anything where it's extremely challenging, extremely strategic, but implementation is part of it. So a lot of like startup founders who have a really great idea and don't want to jump into building a tech team or design team right away, or like, you know, essentially want to pay somebody to be right. I kind of say like, hey, people pay Fictive Kin to be right. Because like your idea can take shape in a million different ways, and probably 2 of them are going to work. And so people who sort of know that route are going to be a little bit more effective than people who are trying it the first time. And then the only other group is like bigger companies like JetBlue, TripAdvisor, Sweetgreen, cool companies like that want to be a little bit more startup-y and a little bit more creative and try something totally new.
When did you get started with OKRs?
Like just a little bit before you met, and based on the book. So like I would say like I've always been a very big fan of Andy Grove. I think Mark Andreessen was like a big proponent of that high output management book, probably back when he did like the P Markup blog. And I got that book. I had to tear the cover off because as much as I love Andy Grove, he's like standing in such a weird way on that cover. I was like, hey, well, we'll just remove this just so I can keep opening this book. But then after that, like I've read the thing like 8 or 10 times. I've never heard anybody just like apply like an academic, like rigorous description to business. And I found that really very comforting versus a lot of like people's life stories and journeys and things like that. And that the OKR kind of stuff is teased out in there, but not made like specific. And so I got over the holiday break in 2018, I was reading, I think 2018, What Matters. I got the Measure What Matters book and was reading it. You know, having already been a bit of a believer, and I think that book sells the mechanism and the technique really well. And so I said, okay, this is a great thing for us to try.
I love Andy Grove's book as well too. And then the fascinating part is you're right, OKRs are introduced there, but it's like only in, you know, across 1 or 2 pages. And so Measure What Matters really takes those 2 pages, I think, and makes the concept of OKRs come to life.
So Cameron, I have a question for you. So I'm the visual storyteller for whatmatters.com. So you built it and I make it look pretty with your help. But creative to creative, what's it like using OKRs in a design agency? I kind of work by myself and with the What Matters team, but I don't work with other visual artists using OKRs. So what's that like?
If I put myself in the kind of creative, strategic like mindset, you know, if you're going to sell your experience, you know, and you're going to be like an agency or a freelancer or something like that, you could be like a low cost provider and you could just say like, hey, I'm going to do like low stakes work that's like, you know, low cost. And essentially in that mode, you're operating as like hands for hire. And I think there's probably plenty of people out there who can make a good business out of that. But what I found is much more fulfilling is like to be hired for and to use like your brain. And what I like about that is what I would want out of a client is somebody to trust me enough to use my like thinking and then, you know, of course, express it through application. And what I think is cool about OKRs is it's the same thing, but focused internally. And so you're saying to the people who work at your company, okay, like, you know, I want you to use your brain to help dictate what you might do. You could change the shape of your job. You could change the shape of this project. You can suggest anything. You're totally empowered to do that because I've given you sort of the keys to the castle, which is what are we trying to do at a very high level, right? So I could think of that, or I could work through what that might be, or with a small group of people. But then to make it all like tactical throughout and get everybody to do it, it's like, you know, it's just not a very good use of leverage. It's much better to say, here's the game we're playing. Like, you know, what are your thoughts about how we sort of succeed at that game? So like, here's what we're trying to do as a company, and you're welcome to even question that versus like, it being like a little bit of a secret in other places, I think. So it isn't just about like the creative nature of it, which is totally fantastic. Like you give creativity and you enable creativity in the people you respect. Like if you don't want them to be creative, it's because you don't respect what they might do. And so you want to control them instead. And that's just a totally different type of person than I am. But you know, there's lots of people like that.
Cameron, you've got a lot of experience with going through the cycles of OKRs with your team, right? You've done it for 2 years. You've gone through the different quarters and parts of the business. What lessons have you learned? What can you impart to the broader community? What are things that they can learn from Fictive and Logger?
I think where I am potentially useful to people considering getting started with OKRs is that I do not, and this is not false humility or anything like that, I don't consider us an expert in the execution of OKRs. We are still getting better at it, but I'm close enough to the dumb things we did initially that like maybe I could help people like skip some of those mistakes. I could just throw some out there that are sort of top of mind. But like the top ones are, when we first did it, I mentioned we actually had activities where everybody on their different projects, and we incubated Logger at Fictive, and then it became Logger. So even Logger had its own OKRs inside of Fictive, all this kind of stuff. But it was interesting because then you got to see the mistakes across all of them. And the one rule that I want to say, I kind of want to say it's Marissa Meyer, but I don't think it is, says in the book, it's like if it doesn't have a number, it's not an OKR. Is that right? Did I attribute that correctly?
That's Marissa Meyer.
Nice.
Yes, if it doesn't have,
cool.
I'm sorry, if you
it doesn't have a number, it's not a key result. It's
That's
not
right.
a key result. Yes. Okay, Marissa, we did it. So that one was a rule that's kind of easy to follow. Okay, so but then here's mistake number one is then you start getting a little like lazy, and then you start saying, oh, binary is a number, right? 0, 1, that's a number. But I think that's the trap. That's the indicator to you that you're going down a path of turning your to-do list into an OKR. And that's super easy to do. It's so easy to do because you think that that's like your strategy, but that's just like what you're thinking right now. And if you do that, like it's not, depending on the type of work you do, it's not always great to decide something on January 1 and then not do anything about that decision until April 1, right? Like you want to be paying attention and remembering where you're going, like, and then you'll find yourself being like, okay, I did everything on my key results list. They were all binary and we didn't really make any progress towards the objective. Why did we do that? So that's like, I think mistake number one, that's the easiest one to get back into. And it's, you can really write a very beautiful, exciting binary key result, and you can trick yourself. We did it in the third quarter of this year, and we got to the end of the third quarter and was like, why did we freaking do that again? But it just happens.
Cameron, we're having these conversations because it's about getting into the nitty gritty, the tactics of actually how to roll these out. And so for you in a creative environment, the tactics, right? Like I can read about it, but what did you and the team have to do?
I was very adamant about selling the reason behind doing it, whether or not we're good at it right away. And it comes back to trying to create a company. And I actually think it was one of our, I had it, and I think I even wrote an OKR explaining it a little bit. Let me see what I wrote here. I wrote something, I'll find it. But I did write something that was kind of good about, setting the industry standard. So this was like an objective that I wrote, set the industry standard for a distributed responsibility company. And that's the idea of you take the responsibility away from the top and you push it out as far as you can. And actively encouraging people, like, take any part of your boss's job that you can. Because I guarantee you your boss we can get them something else as well. So if you let people know that the reason you're doing it is to like better them and get them the most experience and help them level up, then it's really about them. It's not actually that much about the company, and nobody wants to waste time, and OKRs are helpful in trying to make you not waste time doing things. So all of the reasons for doing it are good, even though it's maybe a little dry sounding in what you're saying. It's like if you're a designer, if you're a very talented web designer, product designer, it's like, guess what? We're going to go to this old guy you never heard of. His name's Andy Grove, and he worked at this old company that you kind of don't care about called Intel. And he made up this thing called objectives and key results. And it includes a lot of numbers. Like, that's not like such a sexy sales pitch, but like, I think you can spice it up with the like underlying, here's what it says about how we think about you.
Folks can learn a lot about OKRs, but not be so great at applying them in the workplace, right? Because it really does depend on the others, right? OKRs are only as strong as the culture. OKRs are only as strong as the team that's using them. And so I think for us, we continually love hearing stories of how teams are using them within their organizations because we're learning. We are continually learning how OKRs can be used better and better and better. And I think you ended actually with the most perfect takeaway that we continually hear from companies that use OKRs well. It's always got to go back to the why, right? Why are we here together? What work are we trying to accomplish? With the limited time that we have, right? And whether it's the project, the time, space, how do we make the best of it, right? And how do we make the best of each other as well too? So that's something I love.
Some things that we did that I think are useful. Some of them are from the book, like drawing the distinction between the aspirational and the necessary. I don't remember what the necessary is, but like essentially you're giving people like the permission to fail, committed. So you're giving people permission to fail, not just at the thing that they're doing, but at the OKRs themselves. Because you start out very meta. The original OKRs even had an OKR about doing OKRs because we're trying to introduce this process. So it's like you're in this meta mode for an organization we have an organization that balks a little bit at businessy, managementy stuff. And so they'll sometimes rename things. And so we did have somebody rename. We don't say OKRs, we say orcs, which is just like those Green Goblin things. And when we present them, if there's like a business orc, it's just like an orc with a little tie. Or if it's a marketing orc, they have like, like it's just sort of silly stuff that like made it go down a little smoother, and then let people sort of like take the seriousness out of it, which for our organization is really important. But, at other organizations, having little green goblins would be too much. So
you've dug into the book, you've dug into high output management. What other resources do you send your team towards, right? Or for yourself?
The book is really good with like 3 or 4 of the chapters being like extra good. And then like that, the Google Sheet and the Andy Grove video, it's kind of all you need to get going and like start. And then like, why not have experience teach you a good amount? And then you can go deeper on some of the resources. Yeah, those two were wonderful in a sea of kind of mediocre.
So do you guys want to play a game?
Sure.
Say yes.
Yes. Sign us up.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth, and welcome to OKRs Then and Now. So I'm just joking, you guys, but really, I do want to talk about OKRs Then and Now, because I know that the first OKR I ever wrote, don't tell Ryan, it might have been on one of his teams, was pretty abysmal. My very first OKR was, it's incredibly specific. Are you ready? Deliver excellence. Say
more.
Nope, that was it.
Where are you sending it? Where is it getting delivered to?
Nope, that was it. I'm gonna deliver excellence. So I think we all know what is wrong with that in general as an objective, right? So I challenge you, what was your first objective that you ever wrote?
Okay, we don't have one like that. Well, the first one
honestly, mine was so rubbish it's good that you don't have one like that.
That's true, I guess. It's still we wrote widely recognized as the best product studio in the world or something like that in 2019, which is like an objective. But then underneath the key results was like, a gazillion key results, and it was covering like culture and client variety. It was like all over the map. And so I think it was like kind of aspirational, like at least was ticking the box of being sort of aspirational in that way. But then like underneath it, like the actual like journey to there wasn't set up for success. And then even still I think the objective is very hard to validate that it happened. There's stuff in there like widely recognized means there should be like an awareness of us. Really, great, best, is it about the work being good? Is it about being the biggest? Is it about being the most profitable or something like that? Organizationally, I know us, it's like about quality of the work as opposed to like size or something like that. But yeah.
That's when I often say that your key results need some nouns. So they're not just adjectives, they're not just superlatives, it's not just deliver excellence, it's deliver what kind of excellence, it's deliver how, it's the specifics of it.
The quality of the work is the part that matters the most, right? Like that's probably, when we think about a firm or anything that we do, it's like, we want to be proud of the work that we do. And so it almost feels like that was the natural outcome of first crafting objectives and key results that, I got to do it in the businessy kind of way. And then you realize, well, no, if there's another objective North Star that we all are trying to rally behind. That's why we all came here. That's why we're all working together. And it's really good, high quality work. And that's the outcome, right? And ideally, if we do that, it does lead to the revenue pieces. It does allow us to have the team sizes that we want, right? Because we don't celebrate when we get 100 team members, but we do celebrate when we launch something that we're proud of. So.
Yeah, and there's the other top 5. I think there's maybe, I don't know how many of the best business books there are, but The Score Will Take Care of Itself, which is Bill Walsh's book, is objectively one of the best business books of all time, even though it's about football, and I'm not actually that big of a football fan. But the general principle is like, focus on what matters, and then the other stuff's going to work itself out. And if you just focus on profit, you're going to get a totally different kind of company than if you focus on like the quality of the work, and then the profit will sort of come.
So true.
And now, please, actually, tell me about your now OKRs. So Cameron, OKRs.
It's a great question, Elizabeth.
OKRs that, you know what? I'm such a dork. I held up scissors and I'm sitting in front of a.
Excellent. Okay.
So anyway, Cameron, tell me now how you set OKRs. What's different?
I think the pandemic just changed everything. And we changed, Effective Can, we changed in the middle of the year from thrive to survive, I think is a very probably common theme. And so the only objective that mattered was survive the 2020 pandemic without any layoffs. And so that was sort of a priority that we had made as a company, is that we're not going to play any defense, and we're not going to let go of people who have committed a lot to the company when things are the hardest, because we were just seeing people dump people onto the streets, especially I'm sure a week before they were like having meetings about how we're all a big family. Let's work really long hours. I'm cynical of that. So we just decided we're going to stick together. We're going to make it through 2020. And the key results were like revenue numbers and then like no layoffs. I mean, that's an easy one to do.
I think this pandemic really has put a lot of pressures on every kind of team. And I would say in these kinds of moments, leaders don't always have the answers. And so this was a moment for us to in the different companies that I work with and such, to reach down into truly the leaders of the company, right? Like the ones that are in the trenches doing the work. Where should we go? What's working? What can we measure? How do we stay resilient till the end of the year? Because hopefully 2021 is really bright. And I think we're all really optimistic that 2021 will be bright, but we still have to get there, right? It's still really hard.
I have to piggyback on that because you hit on something that I've seen that's like the nefarious underbelly of OKRs. It's a command and control leader with like a fragile ego and everything like that, creating to-do list OKRs for everybody in the organization and saying like, hey, where's the OKRs? Where are we on those KRs? And it's like a really obnoxious version of it that like every good thing, everything good and bad, but like that's the bad version. So if you work at a company where your boss is creating your OKRs and harassing you about them, say, watch this fucking video. You suck at OKRs, boss. It probably works somewhere else.
Yeah, well, remember, OKRs can be used for evil, and that's the sad part, right? And I think when they're used really well, they're the way you use them, Cameron. They're the ways that I think the teams we try to lift up on whatmatters.com use them. But I think the key takeaway is we're all learning how to do it together, right?
Cameron, was anything difficult for your teams to turn into an OKR? Yeah,
so there are a couple of things that were difficult. And I don't even know if we fully cracked it. But there are subjective things that we had to think very hard about how to make objective. So there are things that are very easy. Let's say, let's take Fictive Can. Let's take agency. There are things that are very easy to measure. So you could measure like billable hours per person or, overall revenue. Those are really easy. But this is also in the high output management book. It's like, that's a quantitative measurement, but like the kinds of people who work at Fictive Kin are, they care about their craft, and there needs to be a qualitative balance. Like you can sort of make more money while putting crap into the world, or like not caring who you work with as a company. And so, for example, product quality is kind of a subjective measurement, but not one that you can let go of. I don't think. So where we've landed on that one is would the team choose to put that that work into a case study and publish it live onto the site? And if they would not be willing to do that, that means they're not proud of it, which means that there's like a failure there. So whether or not that was a profitable project, it's a failure in some like key metric.
One of the things that I like the most about the framework is that it's just that, it's a framework. So it is flexible. And the fact that you can actually take something that works with your team that wouldn't, it's bespoke, it wouldn't work with another team, that's okay. And the fact that you found what works for you in measuring something that a lot of people would think is unmeasurable, it's really interesting.
Right. OKRs are such a simple quotes, air quotes concept, right? They're the objective and key result. How do you write them and craft them? But it's about getting people together. So I'm so happy that we spent the time together, Cameron. Thank you so much.
Me too. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Cameron and Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us, as well as everyone who's listening. We're going to come back together again in a few weeks, so look out for that. And you know what? Keep up the momentum because you're doing great. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.